Grammy Award winner and Rock and Roll Hall of Famer Tom Waits has made a 40-year career out of being somewhat of an outsider. The 1980s is a period generally synonymous with processed and synthesized electronic noise. Almost in stark contrast to this, Waits' productions introduced a body of relatively unfamiliar and organic instruments such as bagpipes, waterphones and harmoniums. This was fundamental in enforcing a stylistic shift, pushing the envelope from his drunken jazz balladeer career to his self-production, incorporating styles such as polka, vaudeville and sea shanties. This resulted in the acclaimed albums Swordfish Trombones, Rain Dogs and Frank's Wild Years. And it was this bold move into unconventional territory that gave confidence to other musicians and almost giving credence and validity to their cause. Notably Celtic punk band The Pogues, who shared a lot of the same and similar instrumentation and stylistics. Lead guitarist Philip Chevron saying, "Waits reminded us of the potential freedom to be expressed in making music, the liberating effect of not using a conventional rock lineup." What's also worth noting is the influence of artists like Captain Beefheart and Frank Zappa, which became a staple in his 1980s work, and in particular instruments like marimba and bass marimba used here in Rain Dogs' Clap Hands.
Clap hands. Clap hands.
And of course this influence would trickle down into other genres of alternative and experimental rock music, the marimba then making an appearance on Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds' The Carney. Variety reported that Tarantino had him audition for Reservoir Dogs, reading the opening Madonna speech just so that he could hear Tom Waits saying those lines. It's safe to say that Waits has become something of an iconic figure in alternative culture. This projection aided by scores of Waits covers by high-profile artists or numerous roles in Hollywood films. His much-imitated trademark growl, described by critic Daniel Dershowitz as sounding like it was soaked in a vat of bourbon, left hanging in the smokehouse for a few months, and then taken outside and run over with a car. Or his penchant for often bizarre and experimental production have long been a source of cultural inspiration. It's widely reported and speculated that his voice and mannerisms were the basis of Heath Ledger's Oscar-winning portrayal of the Joker in 2008's The Dark Knight.
I have a growing level of popularity throughout the intercontinental United States.
I thought my jokes were bad. If you're good at something, never do it for free.
Long since being the source of much imitation and reference, Ledger's portrayal is generally considered to be one of the greatest acting performances of the 21st century, and so it could be argued that Waits' persona has indirectly influenced a generation of Halloweeners and theatregoers. And whilst Waits gained larger roles in Hollywood films, his music has also been prominent in soundtracks such as Fight Club or The Walking Dead, as well as his song Way Down in the Hole being used as the theme to HBO's hugely successful The Wire. And it's the production and the ambience of these songs that is often contributed to the mood of the scenes that they're used in. Waits has been no stranger to the concept of social and political engagement through particularly his more recent music, 2004's The Day After Tomorrow, which accounts a soldier's first-hand view of the Iraq War, or 2011's Hell Broke Loose. Rob Rosenthal writes that with displaying certain values and making them familiar to a public at large, music can make conversation and involvement easier. And whilst Waits isn't rallying up a political movement, there is a definite anti-war narrative that can stimulate and even facilitate social conversation. Throughout his career, Waits has gained a reputation for being somewhat of a troubadourian rabble-rouser. There's always a prominent contextual focus on gritty lifestyles and the underclass on the fringes of society. And regarding his role in society, Philip Glick argues in his thesis that his task is communication, to tell his audience of things that they have never seen or heard of before. But the social role isn't limited to purely being a receptacle to Waits' storytelling. A key aspect of his production is his use of found instruments and junkyard orchestras, particularly inspired by the works of Harry Partch. Waits says that anyone could buy the instrument he uses at a pawn shop, build her own sound system from boomboxes and join the fun. And as Molly Jones indicates in her thesis, his compositions include a diversity of influences, references and ideas that have a strong chance of drawing people in from different backgrounds to listen and make music themselves. His dramatic shift in style with Swordfish Trombones in 1983 came with a shake-up in Waits' professional management. Waits moved from Asylum to the more progressive Island Records. Inevitably, Ireland was bought out by the Universal Music Group, and rather than re-sign to a major subsidiary, he instead signed to Epitaph Records in 1999, one of the few labels owned and operated by musicians. Waits exudes a renowned distaste for advertising and the use of music to sell commercial products, once saying, "Commercials are an unnatural use of my work. It's like having a cow's udder sewn to the side of my face." And the concept of advertising was satirised in 1976's Step Right Up.
A large print giveth and a small print taketh away. Step right up.
So when approached by Frito-Lay in the late 1980s to advertise Doritos, Waits inevitably declined. Instead, Frito-Lay hired an impersonator to perform a Waitsian-style jingle.
Yeah, try 'em, buy 'em, get 'em, got 'em. Everybody go. You don't say so.
Tom Waits sued and was awarded $2.4 million in damages. A decade later, it happened again, this time with Audi. And again, Waits successfully sued the car manufacturer. And this particular ruling was a landmark decision in European courts, protecting the personality and the reputation of writers and authors, acknowledging an artist's voice as his creative work. For someone who seemingly estranges themselves from the use of modern technology, it's kind of hard to determine their technological influence. Waits' production veers more towards organic and natural sounds. But within this ethos, there is Waits' famed use of found sounds in his productions, and a lot of this quest for the right sound kind of resorts to dragging metal chairs along floors or bashing sets of drawers with a 2x4. But nowadays, found sounds are a prominent feature in production. Modern musicians weave found sounds with more traditional music production to create cohesive songs that resonate on multiple levels. Furthermore comes his application of looping and sampling, famously in Mule Variations Big in Japan, that opens with a sample of Tom Waits smashing up furniture in a Mexican hotel. This certainly lends consideration for his postmodern approach, and another example of this would be his prolific use of bullhorns and megaphones in his live and studio recordings. And whilst he does acknowledge it's possible to do the same thing with an equaliser, he says that nothing beats the drama of a bullhorn, and it's this propensity for theatrical realism that is at the core with Waits' revivalist ethos. Of course, nowadays a megaphone effect is par for the course in a software EQ, such as the preset in Logic's stock EQ plugin. And not to suggest that Waits is a pioneer for the use of megaphones in production, but I would certainly argue that he is a prolific ambassador for the use of vintage and rustic aesthetics in production.